Tyler Smith. It's so nice to have you here. A superb hockey player, a survivor of the Broncos bus crash, mental health advocate, podcaster, the winner of Amazing Race. Your resume has just gotten longer and longer in the few years that I've met you. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Silken. I wouldn't say superb hockey player, but above average for sure.
I would definitely say above average in a country where even average is pretty good.
Yeah.
So you're not calling yourself superb anymore. Okay. But did that accolade sort of, disappear after a few years post hockey?
Well, I was never. Yeah, I got a couple friends that made it to the NHL, and I would call them superb. But I'm proud to be a beer league hockey player now.
Yeah, it's right. It's it's so true, right? Everything is relative. Like you can feel like, wow, I'm doing really, really well here. I'm winning the national championships. And then you go compete internationally. You're like, oh yeah, okay, still got a long way to go.
Yeah.
So no, it's so cool because we first met through Unsinkable, the charity that I started, which was a story sharing charity focused on, it's really a platform where people tell their stories of what they've been through, what they've overcome. And it's with the idea of bringing hope and help to others. And, I really can't think of somebody who represents that better than you, Tyler. You're an amazing human. And what I remember about you then, which was, 5 years ago now, was that you were a voice sharing your experiences with a lot of vulnerability. When the Broncos bus crash happened, it just drew the attention of the entire country. And, it was such an awful tragedy to lose those 13 young people. And I think everybody
16.
16.
Yeah.
16 young people. I think people felt that just in their gut. And then, in my recollection, you really were one of the first people to start talking about the emotional and mental health aftermath. Can you take me back a little bit to that time?
Yeah. I guess I realized quickly that there's no magic formula to this. And I still don't think there ever will be, because there is, just life. Unfortunately, you never know what's next. And I think it's in some respects, I'm still trying to constantly figure it out. And I think a lot of people can relate to the fact that, we're constantly trying to figure it out, and we're constantly trying. And I think I started to quickly realize, unfortunately, how many people are struggling. And I think that's, that's a pretty humbling experience to go through when you from your story can start to realize like how many people, not just in your life, but just like people in general, are going through it. But I also realized quickly that, people don't really acknowledge their story. And I think that's something that elevating people to start acknowledging their story is a very powerful thing. And I remember, writing my Unsinkable bit, I didn't have any expectations. I didn't have any, anticipations of honestly even doing it to start. But I think after writing that, and then after how many people responded to it and how many people shared it on Instagram, I think it kind of just opened up my mind and opened up my eyes to the fact that there is some power in a story, and really for people, having a relatable story is a pretty unique thing to go through. And it's a pretty, I guess, valuable thing to go through as well, because it can help validate you through your story and your own struggles as well. So it's wild.
I think that word is very powerful, validate, because when we're struggling, no matter what it is, if it's mental health, if it's a physical illness, if it's the two things together, there is this feeling of like you're alone in it. And, one of the things that you coined right from the beginning was it's okay not to be okay. And that was just such a simple, 6-word sentence. It's okay not to be okay. But it became kind of like a rallying cry. And I think, what I remember it back to that time, you were always wearing a baseball hat, which you still are. And, baseball cap. And, you were this young man, and you still are a young man, speaking out in a very relatable voice to other people, but particularly to young men. And I think that's just a group of people that have a hard time admitting that they're not okay.
Yeah, there's such a I guess stigma is the proper word to use it, but I think it's even still to this day. I mean, when I go talk to a group of men, whether it's in the oil patch up in northern Alberta or my hockey team that I coach, it's still frightening. Like, it's still something that I enjoy doing, but it is pretty frightening, I think, because of that, that masculinity attached. I guess the toxic masculinity of, brush it off and just don't worry about it and just keep working kind of thing. So it's something that I think we're constantly trying to grow on and develop and really, but I think it all comes back to like the relatability aspect of it, and also just like the generational shift. I mean, that's something that, my dad is probably, I guess, one of the last generations that really had that mindset. But, even before then, I mean, the to hear the stories of how that was and how you go about your mental and emotional health is, it's pretty eye-opening. And it's something that I guess we never fully had to go through. And I appreciate the fact that, it has changed a lot, but there is still such a stigma attached to it. And I think if we can constantly continue to create those conversations and create those moments, and honestly, just like, I think it comes down to creating that space. And I think, creating that space is a hard thing, but being able to utilize a story and utilize stories to create that space, I think, can help, bridge that gap and help create some parallels. So it's, we're learning every day about it for sure.
Yeah. And I love that you pointed out that it's also generational, because I grew up with, I'm first generation Canadian. My parents were German immigrants. They, like the whole rest of the world, lived through a world war. My parents were children in Germany during the war. And, you didn't have, you just had to deal with whatever was happening. And I remember my dad saying, why would you even bring old stuff up? That was so long ago. And that was their way of dealing with it, was just shut it down, move on. And in a way, it was a perfectly logical response given what they had access to, right? They didn't have access to counseling. They, farming communities across Canada, a lot of people still don't have access to counseling. So it's why open Pandora's box if you're not going to have the ability to sort through it? So there has been a huge generational shift. But I think sometimes when you're in the mental health space, it's easy to forget that there's a lot of people that this just still either scares the heck out of, or they have so much resistance to navel gazing. The idea that you would go back and disseminate your experiences, why? So I just kind of wondering, you're also in a hockey culture, right? And not to assume that hockey culture, has toxic masculinity, but I would think that, talking about your feelings isn't up there with the top 3 priorities for a lot of people.
Yeah, I think the hockey world, it's, we still have a long ways to go. I think we are, starting to make headway, and we're starting to make those shifts and make those changes. But I mean, at the end of the day, hockey is such a physical sport. You look at football, you look at all those very physical sports. I think it's easy to kind of get wrapped up into the fact that, all right, this is physical. I don't need to worry about the mental or emotional side of things. But I think as you start to really see the athletes, the top athletes come out, and your Patrick Lainas of the world, mentioning that he's going through it and he's going through his mental health, and the individuals in the NHL that are entering the players assistance program. I mean, I think you're starting to see that, and it's sad that guys are obviously getting to that place. But the fact that there is word of guys actually entering the program and wanting to go through that and wanting to help themselves, I think is something that we can celebrate, and we can celebrate that accomplishment. But I mean, at the end of the day, we still got a long ways to go. And I think it's unfortunate just because I don't know if it's, not just men, obviously, women as well. But I think just the fact that if it's in the past, I mean, I think people feel like they can't get involved in it anymore, their experiences or their struggles. And I think there's that misconception that people feel like it's too late to get involved. And I think, reassuring people that, no matter how many years ago, no matter if it was yesterday or, 50 years ago, it's still something that holds merit in your life, and like trauma stays with you in your entire life. And I think that's something that, in the hockey world, especially, like it's just go, go, go. And even just in like the business world, it's such a go, go, go world. So being able to like reset and like think back and like actually like acknowledge those traumas and acknowledge like your past and like what you went through is, yeah, it's an interesting experience. And it's something that I think we need to continue to push of like, it's never too late to get involved in your own life. So
yeah, I love that. It's never too late to get involved in your own life. And I think, yeah, looking back at my own experiences as an athlete, like I didn't start doing that deeper personal work till I had kids and I'd finished sport. And I think I would have thought back then that opening up past wounds and past experiences would interfere with my ability to be as aggressive and assertive and as like focused as I needed to be. But in actual fact, when I did go to counseling, and I had to wait till I literally had a breakdown to finally admit that actually I couldn't handle it anymore and I needed help. And it's sad that it took me that long, because I could have saved my kids some pain when they were super little. And I certainly could have saved myself a lot of pain. And what surprised me though, like I remember when my counselor first started asking me about like my family and my past, and I was like, oh man, like, are we really going to go there? And I thought like it would take forever and it was like kind of a dangerous thing to do. And yet I started feeling better almost immediately. And so I know that had I started counseling when I was still an athlete, it would have actually helped me as an athlete. And it certainly would have helped me be a more confident athlete earlier in my career. It took me till the end of my career to really be a confident racer and performer. And I think it would have happened earlier. So I guess I say to those coaches and sort of that old thinking who's like, let's not get into this, because the window, of course, in sport is very short. And so, we're in a way we are trained to push things down and perform. Like, you have to be at the starting gates of an Olympic final on July 26, 2002, or whatever it is, right? That's the exact date. And doesn't matter what's going on in your life, you have to perform on that day. And that necessitates, I guess, or it's perception that it necessitates that that's all you deal with at that time in your life. And I think that's too bad, because I think that athletes push things down until they boil up in a way that's kind of uncontrolled.
Yeah, I think it's, like, I don't know if it's necessarily like the self-sabotage kind of thing, but I think in the long run, you can kind of look at it in a sense where it's just, not being able to find a balance of that. I think it's is more detrimental than you actually think. And I know I look back and I truly do wish I probably had more conversations about things, and I probably, wish I was a little bit more present. I think that's something that I think we all wish for, is just like being present and like actually like wholeheartedly being present, especially in those experiences where you want to remember the most. But it's something that, I think it's something that we're constantly trying to all work on, especially with so many distractions in our world, and especially, in the athlete space where your identity is that. I think it's hard to, be able to think about it where it's like, okay, I can do this and I can like help myself in the long run, or like I have to go back and I have to like, divulge everything, or like, think about all the factors that led me to this point. I mean, it's hard to, you goal set at the start of the year and you kind of do your things that, make you look forward to the future. But I think being able to like, the skill of being able to reset, and the skill of being able to like truly kind of get to a place where you can be present, I think is one of the most profound things that I've learned. And it's, it helps you, I guess, have a more fulfilling journey. And I think that's something that, I wish, upon everybody, just because it is, I think back to our journey on the Amazing Race and like how much we remember and how present we were. And I think that's something that has allowed us to, constantly hold that memory at such a high regard of just like, because we were just fully our authentic selves, but also just like fully present every single day. And that's the hard thing.
So I want to talk about the Amazing Race in a bit. I just, I was curious about where you found the skills and what kind of skills you have incorporated into your life when you think back to the last few years and, coming out of the crisis that you had after the terrible bus crash. What are some tools that you have incorporated in your life that really help you, as you said, reset?
Yeah, honestly, I think for me, like I love people so much and I like continue to love people so much. And I think I've really like started to rely on my people a lot more than I thought. But in that sense, like it's not like every time I have a conversation, it's like, okay, we got to get deep, we got to cry, we got to talk about what's wrong, we got to talk about everything. But I think like I've really realized that like just like a simple connection sometimes and like a simple, whether I'm on a 2 hour drive and I'm not feeling it, or whether I'm on a walk and I need to get outside because I'm not feeling it, and just like hopping on a phone call. I'm such an old soul like that, where like I feel like that phone call really does a lot for me, where like we could just like talk about meaningless things like the NFL or hockey or like just life, and like just like asking those like simple questions sometimes. It's not a way to like distract myself from what's really going on, but I think it's like a valuable tool for me to just like, okay, let's enter this space. And then maybe this could lead to a conversation later on that like is really needed. But for right now, I just want to talk. And I think I've learned the most from people. I truly believe that I've learned a lot from my therapist. I've learned a lot from, reading and, trying to find little tidbits and things that I can do in my life. But I truly have learned a lot from just people in general. And I think just like the perspective of people that I never thought I'd fully connect with, and like realizing that like, oh my gosh, like we have a lot more relatability and in common than I ever really anticipated. So I think like fully allowing the people in your life, or the people you come across, to like share and like actually like, take that in and like absorb that has, allowed me to like kind of, grow in like the speaking world as well. And also just like grow in like my day-to-day life of like, all right, like I learned this, like maybe this could be, good for you. So
it's interesting. How old are you?
I'm 26.
26. Yeah. Cause I've got a 24, 26, 27 and 28-year-old. And I noticed that these young people don't actually call each other very much. That
No.
it's all this way, right? And then like when they actually do get together, you can see their whole mood change and their happiness level just go way up. And it's like, people, are you seeing a connection here? Like you get human contact, your mood elevates. You do this. I mean, people like wish their best friends happy birthday through text, like. So how do we get through this generation like that? This human connection, the voice, the being in the room. I mean, this is so lovely, talking by Skype and Zoom and all of this. It was even better today when I had a person right beside me and you feel their energy. So each level of contact, I think the emotional lift that you get increases. How can we help younger people? I mean, you don't need to have the answer. I'm just throwing it out there. Like really understand, like pick up the phone. Like one of my kids is afraid to pick up the phone.
Yeah, I think there's such an intimidation with like having to go about a connection like in a perfect way. And I think, it is scary to like go into that and, like think about, because you constantly start to think about how they think they're going to go. And like, you hear the stories about like people that, see a phone call or somebody calling and it's just like, I don't really want to talk right now. So it's just like, being able to find that and like challenge yourself and get outside your comfort zone to just like, all right, like I'm just going to do this. And I think it's something that, I call it, I'm on the horn. Like Kat knows, like usually I'm on the horn quite a bit and I'll just like call all my buddies, check in. And it's something that, really does work for me. At the end of the day, it doesn't work for everybody, but I think, like kind of resetting your perception on the fact that like there's no perfect way to connect. Like I think just like that simple act of connecting is something that, we can hold to a higher regard. And like having those connection is, we all have connections in our life, but like being able to like utilize your connections in a different sense, I think can help you grow. I mean, I've learned more than you ever thought from an individual that maybe hasn't went through the exact same thing as you, but has something to offer. And I think, gets back to like that theme of give everyone you meet a chance. And, I think we've lost that a little bit since COVID. at the end of the day, COVID changed a lot of people, and COVID is continually, I think there's ripple effects from COVID that we'll forever deal with. And I think it always kind of comes back to that connection space. And the fact that it comes back to like, you just like never know what somebody has to offer you.
Yeah, and getting over your fear, like you said, of saying or doing the wrong thing or calling at the wrong time or whatever, and putting yourself outside the comfort zone to make that deeper connection with people. Because I think it was Brene Brown that said, that the more you increase your ability for vulnerability, the more you increase your ability for human connection. You can't get it without showing some vulnerability. And, you do that in spades. And like just hearing how you connect with all your friends and how important that is to you. And I wonder if you ever just especially after The Amazing Race, which we'll talk about in a second, but do you reflect on the path that your life has been taking these last few years, and how, this terrible, terrible event in your life and in your whole community's life has also created this pathway that you never could have imagined?
Yeah, I think that really does kind of relate to, I talk about it a fair amount, but like just like that relationship of joy and sorrow. I learned a lot about like how valuable and how vulnerable the emotion of joy is from, her name is Dr. Jody Carrington. She's an incredible, incredible speaker. And she does a really good job of like making her audience realize like how powerful joy is and like that feeling of joy. And I think that's something that was really, really hard to attain for a long time, was really hard to express that, like, experiencing joy after April 6th. And it's still, there's days where I feel like, okay, like, do I really deserve this joy? Like, do I need to go and find this joy? But I think it's something that, it's just like a constant inner battle with yourself. And I think for me, I've been able to attain joy because of the people in my life and because of the people that have helped, guide me along the way. And it kind of comes back to just like, once you've been in the dark, you learn to appreciate everything that shines. And I think I've started to appreciate everything that shines a little bit more, but I mean, like, I'm not perfect by any means. I don't have all the answers, but I know that I've learned a lot from, those 16 incredible families that that lost somebody that day. It's something that, I think about every single day. And I hold those 16 families at, just like the highest regard and highest point in my life. And I want to make sure that, having that relationship is something that is valuable for me. And having that relationship is something that, I think has allowed me to start to gain joy because of, their recognition, and knowing that, they still want us to get back to, living our lives. I can't speak for them, but I've had a couple conversations with them that, they still want us to be us, and they still want us to go back to, finding that joy and like, living and getting experiences. And at the end of the day, everything I do is for our angels, like, everything I do. And it's something that, I originally didn't know how to like kind of move forward with, but like now I've like really realized that you're allowed to move forward with your grief. And I'm that weird guy that like looks through his sunroof and just like talks to my people. So
yeah, I think you have a beautiful tattoo of your 16 souls on your chest, if I remember correctly. It's hard for me to hear you say that you aren't sure you deserved the joy, because like, oh, you're such a wonderful person. And I guess that's part of the survivor's guilt.
For sure.
I could sort of come back to like my own struggles with my mental health, and that very, very dark time when I first started going to counseling and my kids were really little, and I had so much guilt and shame had been carrying for like literally decades. And it was months and months and months of depression and, probably really years. And one day I was, about 6 months after starting counseling, I was walking, it was an autumn day, and I was walking down through the path in my property, and the sun was shining through, and I was really looking at the color of the leaves, and I was like, oh, I think I feel a little bit of joy. And it was an unfamiliar feeling because it had been so long, it'd been so long since I felt that. And, one of our other guests said today when we were talking, she said, this is temporary. Like the pain that we feel, the grief, like it is temporary. And then there's joy, and then there's happiness, and then there's pain. Like it's this, every emotion that we feel, every experience that we have is a temporary experience. And I think getting older now for me is really a recognition of the impermanency of life and experiences. I think when you're younger, you sort of think, oh, okay, well, this happens and that happens, and then I will be here.
Yeah.
Okay. And as I've gotten older, I realized, that's exactly how it goes. And then you're here. And then, then boom, something happens and then you're there. And you kind of had this experience with Amazing Race. I mean, there's been a life-changing event. Let's get into that a little bit. First of all, congratulations. You and Kat won. It was amazing television. I can't believe how kind and courteous the two of you are in the middle of like crises. My husband and I were like, oh yeah, that so wouldn't be us. We'd be like, screw you. No, screw you. It's left. It's right. We'd be yelling at each other. But you two were like, oh, I think you're supposed to turn. And then you were like silent, a few times. Yeah. I just loved it. I was like, okay. So, Kat, I was a bit more of a peacemaker. I think your hyper-competitive personality certainly comes out.
Yeah, it was, don't get me wrong, that it's quite the litmus test for your relationship. And I think it's something that, we went into and we're like, this could be really good for us, or unfortunately, this could kind of be bad for us. And being
you're early enough that you want to know.
Yeah. Being lost in the middle of Ontario, with only a map and no idea where you are, it led to a silent treatment for sure.
And you're not a generation of map readers, if you don't mind me saying so. I mean, like my kids can't get anywhere without their Google.
Yeah, I think you really start to appreciate how easy we have it when it's also just like hard to find maps nowadays. So.
Yeah. And so what was your expectation kind of going into the Amazing Race about the experience, and then how did it kind of unfold differently for you?
Yeah, like I think from the very start, we kind of went into it, and it had been, kind of a long journey to get there. But once we embarked on it, I think we from the start just like wanted to have a lot of fun. And I think that kind of just like goes back to like our relationship as a whole and like how much fun we do have together. I mean, we traveled to Europe like 3 months after we met. I think it's nice because she's somebody that like really brings out a lot of like adventurous side to me, and like kind of like that being spontaneous, getting outside your comfort zone side. And, we went on to this Amazing Race Canada, and it is like hard to fully prepare for because you never know what you're doing. You never know what's next. I mean, it's hard to, you can't, and it kind of comes back to like the control what you can control. And I think for us, like the one thing that we knew that we could control was our emotion and was our like kind of like the joy factor of it. And like also just like being present because, we didn't have a phone for 30 days. So yeah, we went into it and it's like, okay, we're going to spend a ton of time together and it's just us. And I think the fact that like, even after we won the first episode in Calgary, we got back to our hotel room at like 10 o'clock and we just like belly laughed for like an hour and a half about the day. And I think like, that little things like that. And also just like the fact that like Kat and I could talk about the race and like pick up like a memory that, you normally wouldn't pick up because we are so distracted in our daily lives with our phone, with this, with that. And for us, like the fact that we can fully wholeheartedly remember like every single piece of that experience and like that adventure is something that it's actually like hard to put into words. Like you get your phone back and it's just like, I don't really want this because it's just like you were offered the opportunity to like just like be and just like be so wholeheartedly present in the moment every single time. And I mean, they do such a good job of really challenging you, and they don't want to shatter you, but like they'll try and break you every once in a while. And I think that was something that we now appreciate more than you do obviously in the moment.
I'm trying to imagine. I mean, you're a hockey player, you're a very competitive person. How did you not allow that sort of pathologically competitive person to come out and stay out and bring in the playfulness? Like were you just sometimes like locked into like winning? Because that's what I'd be afraid of for myself, that like I just get so locked into winning whatever the, challenge was for the day that I wouldn't actually, like I go so tunnel vision, I wouldn't see or do. It sounds like you found some sort of balance there.
Yeah, I think that was, going into it, we didn't have a ton of expectations, honestly. Like we hoped that our background and our foundation, would be able to help us have a little bit of success. But um, believe it or not, Kat's actually like the way more competitive one out of the two of us, which is,
Okay.
a really good balance. But I think you start to appreciate the fact that like, okay, you are competing and you are against other people, but like Kat did a really good job of like resetting us sometimes, just be like, we are doing our own thing. We're running our own race. We're going to do, our thing. We're going to do what's best for us. And I think that's something that you constantly kind of had to remember and learn of just like, as much as you're at a challenge with five other teams and you're stressed about when they're going to leave. And like, if you're in first place, second place, third place, last place, wherever you are, I think it's just like, you have to just like appreciate the fact that, sometimes you don't know what's next. So you just have to focus like wholeheartedly on what's in front of you. And also just like, this is just you two. Like she did a really good job of just like remembering like that it's just us, even if there's people around, there's cameras, there's people all over. It's just us. Like, let's just focus on us. Let's just run our race.
Yeah, you're what we would say in rowing, focusing on your lane. And I feel like in my life outside of sport, I'm quite good at doing that. I'm quite good at, you just working hard at whatever I'm doing and believing that it's going to be successful, not really thinking about like the marketplace or how it's going to, who else I'm competing with in whatever endeavor. But then if you strap a number on me, this other person comes out. So I have to say, I really respect that you were able to kind of have that balance, even with the number, so to speak, on you. And so how has winning the Amazing Race changed your life?
Like I think it was, one of our favorite, like Kat, I think is the exact same, but one of my favorite things, we went into it and like, we know that like, we're not going on like The Bachelor where like you're going on to like, you're going to get hundreds of thousands of millions of followers on Instagram. Like we know that this is like just like an amazing, wholesome Canadian audience, and a lot of like rural families watch the show. And I think one of our favorite like things that we started to learn from the show is I had a couple families from Leduc where I grew up that would like come up to me and we're just like, every single Tuesday night, like as a family, the first time we've ever done that, we sat down after dinner and just watched the episode. And I think that was something that, I guess it's not something that changed my life, but it really just like changed my perspective as how like Kat and I going on this like fun journey across Canada TV show essentially helped like create, I guess, a community of people, not just like our friends and family, but just like people that maybe liked us or gravitated towards us, of like, they would watch us on a Tuesday night for an hour. And I think that's something that we now appreciate. So like so much more. And I think like every time we, thank somebody for watching, I think we always want to mention like, thanks for coming along this journey with us, because as much as it was, just like us two as a duo, I think we did still feel so loved and like so appreciated by, our friends and family and everybody who watched. And I think that was something that, not necessarily, I guess, I learned from the show, but something I really took from the show of like, it's hard for like a family or like a group of people to actually like take the time to like watch a show together and like sit around a TV together nowadays, because there's so much going on and life is busy and, people always got something going on. So like the fact that families would come up to us and say like for an hour straight, we just like sat down together as a family and watched, was truly our favorite thing.
Yeah. And it is a privilege when people go on your journey with you, so whether it's your journey as an athlete, it's your journey, in mental health, it's your journey on Amazing Race for me, obviously an athlete, a speaker, it's a privilege, right? Because people are giving you their attention, they're giving you their time, they're learning from you when you get up on stage and you speak and you share, you're creating this experience that they're part of, right? Like, what would speaking be like if there wasn't an audience? Like, It's not much fun, right? Like, and we experienced a little bit of that during COVID, right? Like you're speaking into the camera all the time. And then when you get in front of a live audience, when you get even, as Zoom audience or television audience, that energy is there. And you realize that actually you're doing something collective, even when you're doing something individual. And I remember in that, 92, my story at the Olympics was such a big story in Canada. And so many people got up at like 3 a.m. to watch my Olympic final. And they have stories about where they were and who was in the room. And it kind of like confused me at first, like why this meant so much to them. And then you kind of get like a different perspective. And you're like, yes, I was doing my thing and it was completely selfish. I was like focused on this race, but together we actually were part of this collective experience. And it seems to me that like the way that your life is unfolding with Speak Your Mind and your clothing brand, Not Alone, that you continue to seek to build a collective experience. Does that resonate for you?
Yeah, no, that resonates. Wholeheartedly. I think it kind of comes back to one of my favorite quotes from, I don't know if you've read Tuesdays with Morrie by Mitch Albom. It's one of my favorite books. And he says it perfectly where he says, let me find the quote. He says, taking just makes me feel like I'm dying and giving makes me feel like I'm living. And I think like, for me, the giving is like giving back, and like giving back in a sense of like giving a chance for people to create a community and like come together, especially around a hard topic like mental health. Like we have learned a lot, especially since COVID, around the world of mental health, and we will continue to learn and evolve and grow. But if we can generate a community around a difficult subject like mental health, I think that's what allows people to start taking those steps and to start giving again. And because I don't know, it always comes back to love for me as well. And another quote from that is just like, devoting yourself to loving others and devote yourself to the community around you and devote yourself to, creating something that gives you that meaning and that purpose. And I think the collective, that's why I have so much love for people, after the accident, like how much love and support we received from people all across this incredible nation really made me realize that we can do so much good when we come together, and we can do so much good when a community is generated. And I think for that, having that community in whatever space it may be, mental health, grief, just sport, life, I mean, it can really help you, I guess, take steps that you never would have taken before, and also like help you get outside your comfort zone. And I think that's a hard thing to do, of like getting outside your comfort zone and being spontaneous and trying something new. But if you can have the community around you while you do that, like even with the Amazing Race, like there was a big comfort zone that we had to get out of and just go try and be spontaneous. But I think knowing that we had a community of people back home allowed us to do that and allowed us to just like have a ton of fun with it as well. So the collective, the community aspect is huge.
Yeah. And when you have a solid foundation, when you are loved, when you have, your own self-love, I think it's such a strong platform to take risks from. I'm married to a person, David Patchelevins, who owns Good Life Fitness, and he has an abundant amount of confidence. He is a really, truly, genuinely confident person. And I see how that confidence has allowed him to build so many exceptional endeavors in his life. And, if you can give some of that to other people, if you can encourage other people in a way that builds their self-esteem, that builds their confidence, it's like a superpower. Excuse me. And when I hear you, Tyler, talk about love, as a young man, it's so nice to see you embracing that kind of language. And, I hope that one day we can talk so much more authentically to one another, that we can see each other much more clearly, and that we can have conversations around mental health that are just conversations. Like we're just talking about what's really going on in our life, and really understand that conversation, that connection of two people sharing, is part of how we have better mental, emotional, and spiritual health.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I'm proud to say that when I end a call with a lot of my friends, it's always, I love you. And it's a little piece, it's a little thing that, can always keep that connection alive. And I think, you never know what's going to happen on the other end of the line, and you never know what somebody might be going through. So, that little piece of love, that little piece of, concern, that little piece of validation and recognition, I think it goes a long way, and it goes a long way more than you ever can know sometimes. So I think it's just always kind of remembering that.
Yeah. Knowing that you never know what that person is going through and how some little thing that you never even thought twice about can actually make a positive difference in that person's day and maybe even their whole life. And talking about love. So you found love and you and Kat survived the amazing race, and you're engaged to be married. Congratulations.
Yeah, it's been exciting times, and it was funny on the final mat. John Montgomery looked at both of us and said, "What's next?" And Kat just went on a whim, and she said, "Hopefully a ring on her finger." And I never thought I'd have so many moms across Canada chase me down to make sure that a ring was being put on her finger. And I'm glad to say that the ring is on, and we are scheduled to get married next September. So it's incredible. I don't think It's been a wild relationship for us. We've done a lot. We've experienced a lot, and I think to really just like have that day, it's something that we're really, really looking forward to. It's going to be a special, special moment.
Oh, well, and as you said, adventure, and you were part of Canada's adventure race, and it sounds like Kat has rekindled that spirit of adventure in you, which it's so exciting in a marriage to be with somebody who has that adventurous spirit. Tyler, if you can kind of cast your mind back to 13-year-old Tyler, hockey playing Tyler, knowing what you know now, living back, what piece of advice would you give your 13-year-old self?
Oh dear. I think back to a 13-year-old Tyler Smith, and I think it was very much of, making sure everybody else around me was okay, and always taking care of my people, and always being the glue guy, which I, still very much am. I love my people. I love being that glue guy. But I think one piece of advice that I would probably give to myself is something along the lines of, you're allowed to take care of yourself, and like you're allowed to do things for you, and you're allowed to, have that balance with yourself. But also, even this summer, I learned a lot about boundaries, and I learned a lot about, being able to take time for myself and being able to enjoy time for myself. I think before I always had to be doing something, and now it's like, okay, like I'm allowed to just like stretch in front of the TV, in front of my favorite TV show. Like I'm allowed to go on a walk and listen to my podcast. Like I'm allowed to do things that like fulfill me. I'm allowed to do things that, or I'm allowed to have conversations that I probably normally wouldn't have, that can hopefully help shift my perspective. So I think just like that allowedness, I think like truly telling my 13-year-old self that you're allowed to do this, like you're allowed to take care. And I think that's something that, it really does come to mind.
Well, I'll tell you, that's something a lot of 50-somethings still have to learn, that allowing and that making space for just being and enjoying and not having to be productive all the time. Tyler, I hope that you can keep building on the wonderful work that you're doing. And I know that, your path is going to take you in many different ways, but I think that your intention is so clear. Like you said, it's love, it's creating community, it's building community, that I know you'll be successful in whatever you endeavor next.
I appreciate you, Silken. It's good to see you. That Unsinkable article is still something that I think about as to how I guess I got to where I am today. So I appreciate you from the very start, many, many years ago. And thank you so much for having me.
Well, and I send you all my love, and thank you so much for, for being you and for supporting Unsinkable and coming on the podcast to share a little bit about your wisdom and your journey. So appreciate you.
Much love.
Okay, take care. Thanks for tuning into Inflection Time. I hope our conversation inspired you to think about inflection points in your own life. If you enjoyed our chat, be sure to subscribe, rate, and leave a review. It really helps. Remember, every challenge is an opportunity to grow, so keep embracing those turning points. Until next time, I'm Silken Laumann, and this is Inflection Time. I'd like to thank my sponsor, Good Life Fitness, and Tallboy Water. A big thank you to our incredible guests for sharing their stories with us. I'd also like to thank our fabulous production team, our executive producer, Michelle Archer, our producer, Phil Kluba, and our communications director, Christine Bays. Inflection Time was created by Archer Co. Acronym and me. As an Olympic athlete, it's not surprising I love working out and I love going to the gym. Strength training is so important for bone health, for metabolism. And our partner is Good Life Fitness. They are offering a 7-day pass to all of our listeners. Visit our description to access your 7-day pass.